Hello, welcome to the 13th hour. I'm your news anchor, John Watson.
And I'm your news anchor, Emma Lane. On this day 67 years ago, the NAACP declared May 20th as National Josephine Baker Day. In honor of this special day, today we present to you a never-before preview of Josephine Baker's documentary.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in watching this preview.
Josephine Baker was born as the name Frida Josephine McDonald on June 3, 1906 in St. Louis, Missouri. Carrie McDonald, her mother, was a washerwoman whose parents were former slaves of American descent. She had a long life dream of becoming a music hall dancer, but had given up the dream due to family issues. Josephine's father, Richard, abandoned her and her mother shortly after her birth. Her mother eventually remarried and had several more children in the following years. To help her mother's growing family, Josephine quit school at the young age of 8 and worked as a nanny and a housekeeper for the more wealthy white families. It was at this time she was really introduced to being poorly treated due to class and race. She had quit school and started working at such a young age of 12. I think it was around this time where she had started to experience racism personally. It was said that when she was younger and helping her mom with the load of laundry, a woman abused her and burned her hand because she had used too much soap on her clothing. Once she moved out of her home, she was a street child. She slept in cardboard shelters, scavenging for food, and garbage cans, so she had a very rough childhood. In Baker's teen years, she struggles to have a healthy relationship with her mother. Carrie did not want her daughter to become an entertainer and often scolded her. She returned to school for a brief amount of time, but then ran away from home at the age of 13 to find work. While working as a waitress at a club, she married a man named Willie Wells, but then later divorced him only weeks later due to their young age. Following this divorce, she found more work with the street performance group called the Jonas Family Band. Her next marriage was also short-lived. She married Willie Baker in 1921. She retained his last name Baker because her career began taking off during that time, and it was the name everyone knew her by. Josephine also had several relationships with women and went as bisexual, but never had any serious relationships with any women. She also then married 2 other men later on in her life. Her third husband was a Belgian novelist named Georges Simenon. She then married a French composer and conductor named Joe Bouillon in 1947, but their relationship also ended in divorce. Josephine was always with different men as she never enjoyed keeping the same company. She believed that if she wasn't content in a relationship, she should just end it to keep her happiness.
Josephine Baker was one of the most influential performers of the Harlem Renaissance. She began her career as a street performer, transitioning on to dancing in clubs. By 1919, she had joined the Jones family and the Dixie Steppers in touring the United States and performing comedic acts, eventually taking her to New York. While trying to achieve success in Harlem, she was met with much racism. In fact, when auditioning for the role in Shuffle Along, she was criticized for being too ugly, too thin, too dark. Ironically, she ended up making her debut with Shuffle Along, skyrocketing her career. She distinguished herself from others by infusing her unique comedic act into the performance. She, alongside with Ethel Waters, also performed in the Chocolate Dandies on the floor show of the Plantation Club. Around this time, she had become one of the highest paid chorus girls, earning around $125 a week, making her the crowd favorite. While she gained recognition for her performances, she also gained criticism. Despite being a well-rounded performer, Josephine Baker received a nickname such as Ragamuffin. This highlighted her goofy side, completely ignoring her elegant yet intricate style. They completely ignored her ability to do the Charleston perfectly. After watching Josephine Baker in the musical The Chocolate Dandies, poet E.E. Cummings went on to say that she resembled some tall, vital, incomparably fluid nightmare which crossed its eyes and warped its limbs in a purely unearthly manner. As you can see, E.E. Cummings clearly complimented her. However, this opinion also reflected the ways Americans thought. In America, they saw her acts as animalistic, and in a sense, shamed her for it. And so, because of this negative attitude, Josephine Baker decided that she had enough of it, and decided to move to France during France's risen interest in jazz.
In 1925, at the peak of France's obsession with American jazz, Josephine Baker moved to France and made a good impression on French audience through her performances. Moving to France changed her entire life. As a black woman, had she stayed in the United States, she could not have accomplished what she did. She proved that it was racism in the US that prevented women from gaining success. Her performances in France attracted a large number of people, and soon she became the biggest black female star in the world, and also the highest paid performer in Europe. Josephine Baker never turned her back on the US. She helped reduce segregation by refusing to perform in venues that would not allow racially mixed audience. Many of her performances were very popular. The Banana Dance was one of the most popular performances. Because of racism, it would be hard to imagine an African American becoming an international megastar in the 1920s. Josephine Baker was able to change what people thought of African American women. While she was in France, she worked for the military and she was awarded two of France's highest military honors. She also helped African Americans in the US. So she wasn't just an entertainer, she was also an activist.
Josephine Baker returned to the United States during the 1950s to support the civil rights movement. She went to various clubs and concert venues boycotting the segregation. In 1963, Josephine Baker was a key participant in the March of Washington. She marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. and was one of the notable speakers. Due to her numerous efforts to help the African American community, the National Advancement of Colored People named May 20th as Josephine Baker Day. During this time period, she began to adopt children. The family was called the Rainbow Tribe. She adopted 12 children to show racial harmony and understanding. Josephine Baker was truly an inspiration to others during this time period. By adopting children from many countries, examples being Finland and Venezuela, I believe that this showed as an attempt to erase those racial segregation boundaries that was set up by society. She showed others what true racial harmony was and what understanding was. Josephine Baker refused to perform at venues that had segregated seating. In Las Vegas, she was the first to break the color lines of segregation. During Baker's 1951 U.S. tour, she was refused service and admission to numerous hotels and restaurants. One famous case was at the Stork Club in New York City. Baker accused an owner as being racist because he refused to serve her. This resulted her to being on the FBI watch list. She lost her U.S. citizenship rights over for a decade. Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General, helped Baker return back to the U.S. in 1963. This is when she spoke at the March of Washington. This famous quote summarizes the entire legacy Josephine Baker had for civil rights. Surely the day will come when color means nothing more than the skin tone, when religion is seen uniquely as a way to speak one's soul, when birthplaces have the weight of a throw of a dice, and all men are born free, when understanding breeds love and brotherhood.
And tomorrow, time will do the rest. I want you to know also how proud I am to be here today. And after so many long years of struggle, fighting here and elsewhere for your rights, our rights, the rights of humanity, the rights of man.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed this preview of the documentary.
Today we have two special guests joining us today. Please welcome Dr. Helen Smith and Dr. Dorothy Blue from the documentary.
Thank you so much for being here today, Dr. Smith and Dr. Blue.
Thank you for having us today.
It's such an honor being here.
We have some questions today regarding the documentary.
Our first question is, what is your opinion on the fact of Josephine Baker being so bold in public?
At a very young age, Josephine Baker had become independent. Like the documentary states, she was 13 when she left home. This is what led her to being so open, outgoing, and so bold in public.
Yes, I agree. She was very bold at a young age. She also managed to incorporate this quality into her acts. She added bits and pieces of her comedy to entertain and engage audiences. She completely took advantage of what someone would consider a weakness.
That is some interesting insight as to why she grew up being very bold. I would have to agree, leaving home at a young age can make a person mature faster. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Yes, if I left home at that young age, I would be out in the open. I can almost relate to her. Our next question is, do you think what Miss Baker hoped to install in society is present with us today?
Yes and no. She made a statement when she adopted the Rainbow Tribe, clearly blurring racial barriers, setting an example for society. But society is still far from completely getting rid of racial barriers. She showed that we could all live in unity. However, unity can only come if we're willing to let it go.
When she participated in the March of Washington, in her speech, she described how happy she was that the day had finally come where people started to begin the long struggle to fight for equal rights. This struggle is still present in modern-day society. I completely agree with what Dr. Blue has to say. Acceptances is a key for equal rights.
If you think about it, people are still fighting for their rights today, just as Ms. Baker had.
Yes, I agree with you, Emma. Present-day issues are still related to civil rights.
Examples are police brutality and football players kneeling during the national anthem.
That is an excellent example, John. Police brutality is a current issue in regards to civil rights. It is a taboo topic when discussing this issue. Yes, there are those who abuse their authority, but it is crucial for everyone to understand that those are just a few. There are many men and women who fight for the whole country regardless of race and gender.
Yes. Similar to Josephine Baker, without fighting physically, football players are currently using their First Amendment to protest their rights peacefully. I believe this is one of the greatest solutions because violence only fuels hatred. I believe that people should stand for themselves in the face of injustice.
I believe what Dr. Smith and Dr. Blue have touched on points that are really important. They both are right. Until unity can only be placed in society when people are willing to accept each other as equals.
People should always stand up for their rights and stick up for each other when they know what is being done is wrong. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith and Dr. Blue.
Thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
We both really appreciate you coming out here and being on our show today. See you next week on the 13th hour.